Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bravo stream. It is just about time for our final matchup of the day. Bound to be an interesting one once again as we have rounded through the groups and we arrive one final time at this matchup here. Space Station about to take on BDS for the second time at this event. Stokes, I feel like this is about as even of a matchup as we could potentially get. What do you think?
It depends on what Space Station we get. Really, it really does. You know, we've seen a different fire under Space Station when it comes to the NA region. They've been doing a pretty good job over there. We'll get the rosters up on your screen, so you can read those if you're not as educated. Space Station Gaming has recently picked up Yeti. If you're a longtime viewer, you'll know that he used to be on the Sonics, who are at this tournament as well. So, but either way, Space Station has actually been pretty dang good in North America. But when it comes to this event so far, it's not been the same, has it?
Now, it's been a little bit hit or miss so far. The good news is both these teams have had good runs in their most recent matchup versus Furies. There's a lot to talk about in terms of who we've been seeing shine out. Now the question becomes afterwards, will they be able to shine out in this matchup, obviously, versus a greater opponent inside of the group? And the big focus is really, for me, on Space Station was the performance we got out of Bosco in that most recent matchup earlier today versus Fury, absolutely shutting it down. Put up against two separate 1v2 scenarios as well, and was able to clutch both of those out, alongside great performances just in general, alongside a lot of the other rounds. And then you're still boosted by players like Hot and Cold, Rampy as well, bringing that great performance and the rest of the roster to be expected. Also, then you look to the other side of BDS, you have the other side, the other point of aggression that's going to be coming in from the Europeans, Lems and Shaiko, that have been dominating so far at this event. They are a force to be reckoned with as well.
Well, the scariest thing about BDS is that they also happen to have this little Frenchman named Lycofak, and he has been playing lights out at this tournament. A lot on the plate of Space Station Gaming. Let's get one of them off, shall we? Let's see what map we are going to. It's going to be Chalet, our most offender-sided map in between these two. And looks like who we're going to have on offense here. Really can't read the thing here. Let's see. I do believe it's going to be BDS, but we'll see once we get into game here and get everything set up. Our screen in here is a little tiny, so it's a little difficult to figure that out for the production side. So sorry about that, but we'll get it figured out here momentarily.
I think for me, the side that I'm expecting to be tested more so is definitely going to be Space Station because of their kind of hit or miss results from the earlier matches they had yesterday in their run, where we saw some of those front runners that we were just talking about positives for a second ago. Players like Hot and Cold, Rampy and whatnot, they were able to perform very well in their most recent matchup versus Fury, an opponent that unfortunately hasn't fared too well at this major. We're not seeing that same effect come into play when they're playing against opponents like BDS. So do we expect the same thing to happen here, or?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is if you account for the two clutches that Bosco got, right, then there was a potential really for Fury to have 3 rounds in that game instead of the only lone one that they had. Bosco just got away with quite a bit inside of those clutches, showing off that clutch factor as he has always had throughout the years. But either way, I really do think that Space Station will, at a minimum, put up a contest towards BDS. BDS has looked extremely good this entire tournament. One of my front runners here for the entire event.
Absolutely the case. And even in just the most recent matchup where we saw these two teams go up against each other yesterday, it was those stars that were able to outshine and outperform. Even in the entry game as well, we were seeing both the Lems and Shaiko top out the best of the best that SSG has to offer, as in their head-to-head matchup. Unfortunately, a single member of SSG was able to bring a positive entry ratio to the table there. Here's where the group currently sits, by the way, with W7M and BDS sitting on top of it. 9 points for W7M, as well as 6 for BDS. Space Station sits in third with 3 points. Fury all the way down at the bottom, unfortunately, as they have yet to claim a point even inside of overtime as of yet. We do have the potential as well for both W7M and Fury to be confirmed in for W7M and out for Fury's case in this matchup. In order for that to happen, of course, we need to see W7M claim at least 1 more point in their matchup than SSG does.
Yeah, the craziest thing considering W7M is that BDS just got off of a loss from them, a 7-5 loss where not a single member of BDS had over a 1.0. Bride was actually the top with a 0.98, but then you look right across the fence on that game, and KZ had a 1.47, John. 16 and 9, Herds with a 1.37, and Volps with a 1.2. There's a big difference in the Well, a lot of different categories there for those players. So we'll see if BDS can bounce back here today against Space Station Gaming, because I highly doubt that this French squad is going 0-2 on day 2.
Absolutely the case. But you made a very good point there in noting about their kind of lackluster results going up against W7. And both these teams have now shown that they can kind of get shut down in the midst of a matchup there. So it becomes whether it's going to be the case here, or will both teams perform up to par, and will we get that full bare-knuckle brawl to take these teams to the bitter end. It will be the ending of today's stream either way.
And we finally do have the answer as to who is going to be on the offensive side of Chalet. It's going to be BDS. That seems like the right choice, obviously, given the earlier stat. Chalet being the most offender-sided map that we have at LAN here currently. Remember, it is day 2, so these will be updated down the line. So don't go off to your friends and be like, oh, you know, Chalet, this, that, and the third, because it might change here in the future. It might look like a goofball. So we're just waiting on getting these players in here, but there's so much to consider, so much to talk about when it comes to these two teams. SSG had a terrible day 1, 0-2. Again, not a single person over a 1.0 rating for them either past day 1, but a quick bounce back up against Fury will right the ship, at least for now. It was expected, but was it enough to get them back in it? Are they ready to game up against BDS?
Important to note as well, this is kind of going to help the players on SSG a bit if we are to assume that the last matchup shows the good results here. They played it on Cafe the last time around, and inside of that matchup, SSG was able to claim 4 out of 6 of their defensive rounds, but only 1 single attacking round during that. So going to a map where obviously attackers have a little bit more of a favor, probably going to help to bolster that side. And if we assume the defensive end of it will remain strong, maybe they can sneak off enough rounds of that defensive half to work with the attacker advantage and still be able to net themselves a bit more of a victory.
Yes, indeed. And considering BDS starting on offense, these rounds are going to be worth their weight in gold if SSG can get them on the defensive side. That half switch going to mean the most, and I'm just excited to get into it. Once again, folks, we are just waiting on these players to get into the lobby, and once they do, we will jump right into the snowy lands of Chalet.
Another very important player for Space Station that we've been able to talk about a lot, even on his other rosters as well, is Yeti, and whether he's going to be showing up. Yeti's very much, for me at least, an all-or-nothing player, in that we tend to get massive contributions from him, things like back-to-back clutches, picking up multiple multi-kill rounds right next to each other, things along that side. But sometimes as well, we get the other side of Yeti, where unfortunately he's not very present inside of the matchup. A few kills here and there, but his contributions are fairly minimal, and that seems to be very much decided in the first few rounds here. Have not been able to see him turn into that explosive version of himself, from my opinion, yet so far at this tournament, so we're waiting to see if he'll potentially come out in this matchup. If that is the case, that could be a real X factor for Space Station as well, that allows them to push it over the edge and just shut down BDS on the rerun here.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with you on the Xander front there. Yeti is a feast or famine type of player, but recently he's kind of found his stride where he's regularly in the mix of that mid-level, sometimes the upper level of the leaderboard. Just depends on the game that he has. And speaking of games that we've had, hot and cold, had a pretty hot one here today up against Fury. Double-digit kills for him here to start off day 2.
And he's actually been doing pretty good in some of the other matchups too. For instance, the initial game they played versus W7M, we saw him pull off a 10-5 record and a 1.68, which is pretty good for him because we have seen hot and cold in the past coming to LAN, obviously showing those great results inside of the NAL, but coming to international LAN, at least it's not the NAL, has been LAN as well. But yeah, coming to these international stages, we have time to time seen him kind of fall off a little bit there. It seems like, once again, the other regions' playstyles just don't mesh that well with him, and sometimes his stats tend to fall off here, but it seems like he's finding some good results still here at this specific LAN, so giving more credence over to the SSG side of things. BDS, once again, though, looking very, very strong against most challengers, except for that matchup versus W7M, so we'll have to hope that SSG were able to peep in on that one a little bit, peer against some of the weaknesses the W7M was abusing against BDS, and is now going to try to replicate the same things in this upcoming match.
Rochero and Fultz just on your screen a moment ago, as well as Rampy, who's been having a heck of a game so far here for himself, at least today. Again, SSG not too hot the first day, but they've bounced back in a pretty considerable fashion. They're looking to take it more towards BDS this time around. Fultz also not starting off with the most grand gesture this morning, but looking to try and right his wrongs. He got a nice triple kill in that last game to already kind of fix up some of the wrongdoings that did commence earlier on inside of that game, but really didn't matter at the end of the day. Did it with that 7-2 victory. So Space Station now fully in the lobby, same as BDS, folks. We are moments away here from getting into Chalet in the last game of the day here on the Bravo stream.
Once again, just a final reminder for anybody that's wondering if we are potentially going to qualify or knock out any teams from this matchup. Indeed, we potentially can. If W7M ends up with at least one more round than SSG does on the overall scoreboard, then W7M will confirm their playoff position, and that will also confirm, unfortunately, Fury's elimination from the tournament. Another APAC team. Gonna have to say bye-bye to them early here on day 2.
Yes, indeed. And, well, considering these two in this Chalet match that we have at our doorstep, John, there's a lot that could happen here, especially with BDS starting on the offensive side. We've seen how lethal they can be with so many different things going on, especially with Lycofact now coming in and his frag potential. There's so many people, so many bodies on BDS that are highly lethal, and SSG is going to have to worry about this.
All right, let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. It is your last matchup of the day. We'll have the two other teams in this group also playing against each other back on the main stream. If you're watching us on Twitch, just delete the Bravo from the URL and you're good to go. And you can probably do something similar if you're watching us on other websites as well. Let's get into it as the first round is going live here in just a moment between BDS and SSG. First man on the board as well. It's an interesting one. Lion going to be knocked out. Obviously, we've been seeing a lot of Lion play recently to be able to negate some of the movement from the defender, so it makes perfect sense to see him get banned out here. Habana as well, the preferential choice to be knocked out in terms of a hard breacher.
Yeah, especially with Chalet going towards the offensive favor, Lion just making that even more so with those EE1Ds. So a nice ban there from Space Station, and won't allow BDS to clear things or force SSG to hold positions as Star Wortley. So BDS will more than likely try and rebuff that with something like Dokkaebi. So we'll just have to see. But for the rest of the bans, extremely straightforward. Malusi actually going to get banned out. We don't see that one as commonly as we used to when she first came out.
Bar Gaming going to be an interesting initial choice here for SSG as they work themselves downstairs into that. We'll see how this works out for them in terms of utility as well. Lots of mitigation coming in. In fact, all 3 of the utility mitigators have been selected here from SSG, definitely wanting to try and prevent any chaos via nades or other throwables, if at all possible. As we have the Womai, well, of course, the laser gates coming out from Bosco, and the ADSs from Fultz as well defend all of this off and re-buffer, more than likely, the extensions that will also be deployed upstairs to the library, which will be the first target, more than likely, for BDS to try and steal control over. The first major target, at least.
Whew, this game's already getting warm, John. Had to take the jacket off here. I'm excited for this one. We got to see if our North American friends, I guess. I mean, you know, we're always rooting for them when we ever come to land. No bias over here, but slightly. I mean, we are the only 2 Americans here, so we kind of have to hold our flag, don't we? Especially up against BDS. This French squad has always been so very dominant since they came out of the woodworks back in the day. Chaiko got off of his ban and immediately started running amok of EU, and it seems like this train has no brakes. Minus them winning a major, they've basically done everything else you can.
As we continue to see the opening action unfold, it's Lycofact off on his own, as you might expect the Nook to be doing, trying to work their way into Trophy, maintaining that early positioning. The rest of BDS, much like we predicted in the pre-round here, is going to start putting some of that early focus on the clear towards the library. But obviously SSG has a lot of defensive assets placed in that portion of the map as well. They will be more than ready for the challenge in this portion of the map, alongside of the utility I was talking about previously. Nice little push early on here. A spray, rather, does some decent damage against Lycofact. Rampy able to contend more than likely against him deeper into the dining room areas. That scares Lycofact away and will eliminate at least one of the positions BDS is looking to use to crunch out the bar position downstairs.
BDS surely are taking their time, though. You can see attempting to walk SSG back towards the site. They don't want to over-aggress and overplay their hand, potentially giving over some key pieces of utility. Could make this take a little bit too difficult. That frag grenade coming in hot and heavy onto Fultz's location. He'll have to drop down, hightail it out of there. He'll back off into bar stock. Chaiko won't be allowed to take him out just yet from inside of Mudroom.
SSG remaining stalwart at the moment, not showing anything over to the players from BDS, and with good reason too. They want to bait them into these setups. Yeti deploying quite prominently. They would pick up the first kill of the round finally, a little over halfway through it as well, so a pretty quiet one so far. It's Chaiko on the entry that gets caught out trying to work his way into the side position next to Library. Lycofact now ready to finally insert himself. He's been able to find a position in bar, but Fultz expects it, has the angle primed already, shuts him down as well. BDS 0 for 2 on these entry attempts so far with very minimal support behind them. Alems finally activates upstairs, will steal away control of the library. Renshiro similarly wants to be able to try and move back in through Ego here, but the laser gate blocking him off, and there's another angle downstairs that he's paying mind to as well.
Space Station seemingly good for a round here. They just have to stand tall. BDS, they're finally putting a toe in the water upstairs and on the library balcony. Looking to see if they can transition into library or maybe downstairs. They do have Renshiro on the sled, so I'm really looking for them to work this verticality as such. Break this open, make it to where Bosco and the rest of the gang can't peek into the verticality too easily or just reposition at all, especially from this backwards position from Bosco here in bar stock. It's going to be handled extremely well from Brede as soon as that info game comes through. BDS, they somehow managed to get control of this site. SSG has given up the goods, and BDS will get this plant down after a Limbs takes out Rampy. Renshiro, he tries to pick up the frag. Yeti, he needs to get something done, and he will. It's up against the Limbs, and he catches the body. It's a 2 versus 2 going into the post plant, make it a 2 versus 1 in favor of BDS.
Great recovery at the end of the day from BDS to get to this point in the round. SSG seem to be holding all angles accountable for, but BDS pierces past it anyway, and now leaves it all on Yeti here to drop back down, attempt the 1v2. Clutch now at half HP also tries to fire back a response in here, makes it down on the drop due to Renshiro choosing to wait things out from behind the bar, but Renshiro making that play with good reason so he can set up for the shutdown as it's BDS that control the opening round on the attack.
Yeah, bad late round positioning there from SSG gets them punished. I mean, a lot of the site areas in which they could play obviously got soaked up from the angles that were created from BDS up top, but a lot of the crossfires necessary to keep SSG in it just really not there. We kind of had a cove of them over near the mud room in the stairwell. Well, BDS came in from Fireplace Hall, and there wasn't a single person to stop them from doing so. Yet he tried to recoup up top with some of the frags and angles that he had at his disposal, but it was simply not enough. SSG definitely looking like they had it during the mid-round, but BDS get out scot-free.
BDS, let's see now if they can replicate that success moving into the second round here. As SSG obviously shifting around their own perspective. They are going to move to a different part of the map over here inside of dining room and kitchen instead. Still we'll see those same reinforcements going down over into library to try and extend out the play from BDS. They will need to clear that under usual circumstances to be able to follow through and execute downstairs, but they could also try to ignore that, work their way in from Solarium's side as well. So wait and see if that's going to be the plan from BDS, how exactly they'll look to take this.
BDS out of the gates and onto the field for round 2, and it's looking quite similar to what we had in the previous round. Just a lot louder this time with Like Effect on the Ash and the Dokubi coming in from Lems. So we'll see if they can use that to attempt to clear out a little bit easier. SSG did end up having the man advantage when it came to that mid-round like we were discussing prior, but this time BDS going to be searching for that opening frag. And they're going to get it. Shaiko will take down Rampy.
Indeed, getting Rampy, but at the cost of a down against Renshiro. No confirmation on Renshiro just yet, though. Shaiko trying to see if someone wants to get adventurous, leaping out. Chuck the nade in for relative safety to prevent Hot and Cold from going for the swing, but they thought the nade was going to give them a full insurance policy. No, that's just the deductible. Hot leaps out for a third as well as he takes another member of BDS away from them. Like a Fack and a Lems are all that remains now in the 2v4.
There's no way that we have NA Hot and Cold on land in Sweden. The man pushes the window immediately after BDS are getting Renshiro back off the floor. Neither Shaiko or Renshiro paying attention to the hop there from Ego. Extremely well done from Hot and Cold. What a read, as well as what a follow through. Now BDS, I don't think they're getting this one, John.
Not at all here. We'll have to see if Like a Fack and a Lems are able to work anything at all. Let's keep in mind, they're not working with zero map control, no case in their hand either. Case pretty sure is going to be retrievable. I think they just left it outside of a doorway. Yeah, it's still sitting down below here. So fortunately, not left out there on purpose. Did end up going down to a player on rappel, but still is easy enough to retrieve. And they've got a minute and 15 seconds. So certainly not impossible by any means, but definitely a tough one considering the zero map control they have. Although Like a Fack has already made some progress on that. Drifting in due to the lack of resistance from SSG now and taking most of the second floor away. Should be able to open up at least one top-down angle, which I think he may have just done there with the Ash charge. Wait and see, of course, what Lems will attempt to work towards. The flash down, but it's not the right spot. It's Bosco winning on the inside of the kitchen instead, and following it through with the second kill as well. A shutdown from SSG, and a full house between Bosco and Houghton on the frag department.
Yeah, asking for a lot there, Lems. Asking for so very much. Mismanagement is what that would have taken there, and obviously that's all on Bosco's shoulders. So probably not going to happen when it comes to that angle, but obviously you do have to throw it at the wall and hope it sticks, right? I mean, no point in sitting outside or doing anything else. You got to try and win out that round. It's not going to happen for BDS at that time, but it surely did in round one, didn't it? So SSG is going to throw it down into the basement after that successful round off the back of Hot and Cold getting pretty creative with a push onto Ego.
Back into the basement hole now. This can oftentimes be the toughest one for our defenders, but we'll have to wait and see if that ends up being true for this matchup. SSG really coming alive in that previous round. Problem is getting alive through a lot of aggression, mainly from Hot and Cold, and it's a bit more difficult to do so on this site due to the split nature that your teammates need to deploy towards one member. Yeah, they can take a risk, and we could, in theory, see an out-and-about play like we saw from Hot and Cold in the previous round. But in terms of getting away from it and then making it back to the site without getting traded, that's where things get a little bit tougher. And BDS should be able to manage the equation up until the point where they reach the site. That's when SSG's anchors are going to have to step up to the plate and put a great defense forward here, as they will oftentimes be the squad that has to save this round for their team.
Round three, going to be the decider on who takes the lead amongst these two. They've been neck and neck thus far, both of them having their ideas on how these rounds are going to go. Attempting to execute them, and both of them obviously finding some form of success. BDS obviously not in the best of straits after that last round, but more than likely going to be a quick bounce back, as we would all suspect. Haven't changed up anything past the Thermite and Ace coming in here. Not going to have the Dokkaebi any longer either. So going to be keeping it to some more frag-centric type operators, with especially Shaiko still going to be on that Yana, which we've seen him run time and time again. And a good old-fashioned bandit trick is what's going to get rid of the first exothermic charge.
BDS continuing to look for options to get themselves towards the inside. Bosco so far successfully fending off the opening attempts there with the trick play on top of the snowmobile garage door. BDS will spot that there is one player peeking out through this drone hole here. He's trying to see if they will potentially have any angle to use to peer back at him and hopefully eliminate him, but it's not looking likely at this point. BDS going to need to look for other options of insertion overall too. As you can see, they've gone now for the side entrance back over into Wine, alongside of a few other spots on the map, as they're going to try to deploy themselves through the car garage side instead to take this control away from SSG. Only a minute and a half to do so now.
Man, Shaiko has been running that same skin combo with the Spider Charm. I'm pretty sure the entire time I've casted him. It's either that or the royalty skin from all the way back in Operation Red Crow. That's year 1, season 4, for those of you that don't know. I believe that skin's actually from a very similar timeline as well, but oh my, SSG. This is looking like some 2020 stuff to me if I've ever seen it, but Renshiro quickly wisp that away and give them an opportunity. Rampy, though, with a nice frag onto Lycofac. He'll get rid of the, I believe, Claymore that was down there as well, saving his own hide, and SSG potential to go up on the defensive end.
Ride and Renshiro, all that remains now. A little bit of a better situation when compared to the last round. At least they do have a trade against Yeti, but still not great, especially when you're considering they need to work their way into a basement site, which is just a big metal box that SSG can lock themselves into if they like to here with only 30 seconds left to play. Will more than likely become the status quo here, forcing BDS out into the open, forcing them to take these fights, potentially peek directly into 2, if not 3 members of SSG. More than likely set up just like that there. We see Hot and Cold striking down Renshiro to take out the remnants of BDS. Breed, all that remains here on the hard breach in a 1v4, has the intel on Hot and Cold's position, but aside from that, nothing really to work with here, and that'll show as he works his way into the site. Fultz has no problem shutting it down with just an aggressive little peek here. Round, and now goes over to SSG's hands. We are tied up.
Well, BDS not exactly having the best opener to that one. Is SSG able to take full control? I'm going to send it over to Bar Gaming. BDS, I like that they were able to keep their strategy window open, right? They they first things first go over to Snowmobile, start things off on that side, but it doesn't really work out. They have Rampy, or rather Bosco on the other end, managing Bandit and able to Bandit trick out one of those exothermic charges from Thermite. BDS though, like, okay, cool, that's not too bad. We still have a lot of people kind of maneuvering around the map, so maybe we send it over to Big Garage and try and come in from that area. No, that one didn't work either. They try to work their way and they eventually get the wall open, but it's too little too late. SSG had been finding frags across the board and abound across the map as well. Shaiko getting taken down in a pretty awkward situation around the bar area. I believe he tried to push down the stairwell, but really didn't get to have our eyes on that one. So past that, round 4 up, and BDS going to be going back to the Dokkaebi. They also have Ying and Capital along here as well. The Yana and the Sledge have been what has been sticking around on this offensive side, and for most teams, that's usually how we see it on a majority of maps.
So BDS, of course, now down by that one round, and SSG starting to set themselves up for a successful run. That's what we were talking about before, about how SSG's defensive side has looked quite promising here, despite the fact that this is generally an attacker-sider map. So if they're able to keep this edge going and negotiate even a 4-2 scoreline, things will be looking quite better for them.
Okay, so Space Station, they're not going to play anybody in death spot here for Library. That's that corner area that we usually see Foltz in with some ADSs and stuff like that. They don't trust it up against the burn game from BDS. And I mean, why would you, especially when they're bringing Capital? Those firebolts can mean the world to a team. It's going to be a frag grenade out here and a check, but obviously nobody home. We already know that. This is a great calculation from Space Station Gaming, as they still have plenty of bodies upstairs. 3, in fact. One on the balcony, one inside of that tiny room, and the other one over in the library hallway that can help and act upon anything that BDS does once they actually hop into this. That's actually going to be like a nice little one-way here for Foltz. One of the discs catching up, I believe, one of those fire bolts, the only counter for Capital in the game. The other tactical bolt, though, will work out. Like a fact, does get hot and cold. Does Foltz have anything to say? Hasn't been able to find the angle for himself just yet, and he can't push back out on that rotation. There's a big risk that somebody in Library takes him out if he does try to go for that ego swing, and it really doesn't even matter anymore. Lem's completely switching positions as he'll move down towards the fireplace door.
Foltz continuing to patiently wait out. Presence being slung his way. The drone revealing it, but it's quite an obvious spot to begin with, so not going to be forced to swing away just off of a measly little drone like that. He'll even have additional support still. Waiting in the connector over towards the metal stairs here. He redeploys over towards it, throws out a few more of those magnets just to rebuffer it for the eventual play they're expecting to come in from the players on BDS. Rampy gonna get scared away from the first floor side door here. Bride, off of that distraction, is able to work his way into Billiards and start the plant process. Bosco wrapping back around. He's gonna be far too late though. Bride will be able to potentially fend this back off. Rampy did successfully knock out Shaiko, so it's all on Bride right now. Timing, I think that Candela throw, and there it is, now blinding out Bosco and anyone else that tried to re-peek him before he moved away from this one. The post plant now set up here for the players on BDS, but SSG taking them down regardless. Foltz with the pickup on Alems, now taking the player advantage, but look at Like a Fact setup, just tearing him down head by head. It's a quad from him, leaving just Bosco in play for the 1v2.
Bosco, big brain plays, but Like a Fact, he's already done the dirty deeds, hasn't he? He got all the kills necessary. Space Station rocking a hard place when it comes to this retake. It's an ace for Like a Fact, and I do believe it's his first one on land. If I'm mistaken, I'm sorely sorry, but definitely always want to call that out when it happens for our new players. So fantastic job from him and for BDS. Really, really awesome in that round, especially with the positioning of that plant, how quickly Bride was able to get that down. Bar gaming is always difficult to retake when that plant goes down. You have to deal with all those players outside, including the verticality if they have that library control, which, I mean, if you're planting there, you definitely should. Just saying. Yeah, SSG, I mean, it's always going to be difficult trying to play into that. Like a Fact, just making it even more so on the library retake for them.
So BDS bounces right back into the game now. SSG beginning to run away with things, but indeed losing their edge, now returning to this first floor hole. We haven't seen a bit of previous success for them. BDS, though, coming very, very close to taking it in their own regard. Is going to look to now steal this one away and lock in at least a guaranteed tie at 3-3 here. SSG, of course, looking to accomplish the same thing. Still very heavy on the utility mitigation front from SSG, as it has been throughout most of this half, wanting to avoid any nade-based, utility-based chaos here by still bringing both the magnets as well as the laser gates between Yeti and Rampy. Aside from that, though, usual expected amount of utility playing heavily into those goo mines on default. Still Bosco with the comfort pick, and of course, hot and cold on the ever-present Azami.
Round 5 on the board now in between these two, and it's steadfast here as we are tied. BDS going about things in quite similar fashion to what we've been seeing them before. They've really been liking this library side take, and a lot of teams do for Chalet. We've seen some teams experiment over time with some Solarium side ordeals, but it's always seemed to be that library is the favorable start. BDS is also going to have like effect on a solo mission downstairs. These logic bombs giving him a lot of information. He knows some players are around here. Great trigger discipline on that, but unfortunately enough, Foltz will get taken down here after he's able to take out Shaiko. So practically an even trade, as Foltz is actually lighting the world on fire right now, as opposed to Hot and Cold in 2 as well. Been looking pretty good, these two. Brede not able to hit those crucial shots. Unfortunate stuff, as Hot and Cold will skimper off. Be able to stay alive for this one.
See, like a fact, it picked off this time. The ace in the last round, but won't be able to take it forward in this time around. Bosco shuts him down and still maintains multiple floor control for SSG here, mainly on the first floor as he tries to make that descent down through the hatch and play things out, but is instead going to be caught out by that member of SSG. Hot and Cold able to really re-rotate back around to position himself in case there's going to be any pressure towards Trophy. Not really looking like we're going to get it, so more than likely going to see him reposition yet again. BDS pushing almost entirely from library side now with the 3 remaining players they have. Just 1 player, I think, was working their way from the first floor, and that may have very well been Renshiro, who we just saw repel back up. Lems as well joining the party up here as they'll attempt to clear through this one and work their way downward to eventually get into the site. Fortunately, a player down there, they're going to have to look for a pick to really justify that type of place down. I don't think SSG are too keen on giving it to them unless they want to rotate over towards Solarium.
Solid stuff from BDS so far here. So they're continuing to propel themselves forward, even though they're down a man. Trying to get it done here from the fireplace side. Got somebody on an Ego balcony. Brede is going to drop down. He's going to be the only hard breach after Lems picks up Bosco. It is going to be a 3 versus 3. They've gotten the kitchen wall open, or rather the dining wall open here to attempt a plant in there momentarily, but this could be quickly thwarted from Rampy upstairs. He's got somebody in tow as well to be able to assist with some of the angle. That's going to be Yeti. Hot and Cold will be the only one on site. Alem's trying to work his way in from the hallway as well. Summon charge in upstairs, try and mess with Rampy a little bit, but he'll counter that out with a couple of bullets quite quickly. Brede will go down. That's going to be case control to Alem's. He's going to push even further to try and get this plant. The cross angles, Renshiro with a shot onto Yeti, the 2 versus 2. We got to get a plant here, but it's Rampy from upstairs. Renshiro trying to see if anybody will peek, but Rampy's not going to gift it to him. Space Station Gaming win round 5.
It's done from Space Station Gaming, slowly collapsing away from their site setup only when necessarily needed. BDS, of course, trying their best to encapsulate it anyway, and really looking for any type of plant opportunity they may have been able to find just to be cut off at the tail end of it from the top end as well by that member of SSG, re-solidifying the advantage for them one final time. Are they going to be able to keep it, though? It's been a very seesaw-y half so far, so a 3-3 half is very much in the cards here if BDS shows up for the master take.
Which, I mean, just as of right now, incredible from Space Station, given the circumstances of this map. I know we harped on it decently during, the prep for this, but when it comes down to it, Space Station are doing something that is completely against the grain on Chalet. It is the worst defensive win rate of any map here at LAN with a multitude of plays, and yet they're still able to at least equalize with a squad like BDS here. I mean, that's just not something you see every day.
What is not? So trying to see if they can really lock things in for themselves. Not going to see any dramatic changes to the operator lineup. Still heavily relying, of course, on the utility mitigation more than anything else. And actually bringing the overall strategy a lot closer to the site here by adding the castle into the fold as well. Just as much freedom, so we'll probably still see some of those extensions coming out that were alive on the previous play for this site. But the late game round, once again, I think is going to rely much more heavily on defending the actual site area here instead of trying to get an advantage earlier on. Let's see how it all unfolds here. As, of course, BDS out on the map with their own strategy. Like if I'm going to try to mess around with things again on the Nooks. We'll pay close attention to him in the early round here as he tries to make that impact.
Looks like he wants to try and start downstairs from Big Garage. Drone out. BDS overall starting from that Solarium side. And we were talking about earlier, this is not usually the traditional way that we see teams go. They obviously have used it throughout the history of Chalet. It's not like it's never been done before, but it's definitely the ugly duckling of the two takes. So we'll see how BDS can go about this. We're not going to have anything unique for this take, minus the Nook working its way in, also Nomad, but each one of those has its own place. I'm more talking about something like Blackbeard or something to try and manage those Solarium windows, or even the windows for Bathroom over here. We see that every once in a while as well. Space Station is going to be decently spread throughout the building. Obviously, they'll be centralized around this northern area, but Fultz is going to be off on his own lands over towards Mudroom, occupying the blue stairs at the current moment. Oh, Bosco. I actually thought that was a nade going off there and killing Yeti, but he somehow stays alive. I think the frag grenade actually went underneath the jacuzzi there and soaked up most of the damage. So Yeti going to stay inside of Bathroom for an extended period here, even though his number was being rung.
Lems, of course, did get picked by the defensive setup from SSG. That brings him down for the count. BDS now trying to work with the remaining 4 that they have, and realizing that a direct insertion from the outside repels is just not going to work as much as they thought it was here. Trying to establish bottom to top angles where there's going to be a big risk in play because of that here. Obviously, the members of SSG will have a little bit of a advantage inside of the direct gun duel, so they have to watch out, try and see if they can catch the members of SSG by surprise here, and so far just haven't been able to do it. You're seeing them attempt to make these peaks, but look at the health pools because of that. Brede, one of the last players at full HP, gone down. Lycofac's been finished off, and here we go. The culling has begun. All these players at low HP makes for a very quick spree of kills from SSG. Renshiro, now the only one that remains in a 1v5, and SSG, nice shot there from Renshiro, at least catches Yeti. Yeti's tried that like 3 times this half, by the way, and I think he's been gutted every single time he's tried to leap over the top, so a little unlucky in that respect. But again, he's been finding that decent contribution that Stokes noted here. He's been finding a good middle ground for himself to what previously has been a very much all-or-nothing playstyle for him. Renshiro finally reaching the end of his rope there. I believe Fultz gets credit for the final kill.
I mean, Xander, you know, if being a pro doesn't work out anymore, there's a big potential for the WWE, because that was something there. Sends himself off the top rope trying to get that ace there, but just doesn't come to fruition. But you know what does, John? What? A 4-2 half on the defensive side of Chalet. That is incredible stuff from Space Station. Let's see if they can put this offensive side together. I'm excited here. We got BDS down. They need to try and bring it back on their own defense. Let's see how they can stand up to this test of time.
Now, it's important to note that based on the score from the other stream, I don't actually know it off the top of my head, so if you guys have it up, you'll be more informed than I am. But if we continue to see SSG excel here, that potentially spoils the qualification for W7M as they are looking to make their way forward to the playoffs from this matchup. They will need to get at least one more round than SSG does to be able to lock that one in. And so far, not the best of straights in terms of doing. I don't know how this works out necessarily if SSG like win this just straight up in regulation and we see W7M go to like overtime, how that would potentially play, but we'll follow that one up, of course, with our experts when we get the opportunity.
Yeah, we gotta go up into our very high tower where our analysts are secluded away. We'll speak to them and see what's going on with those numbers later on today. Make sure you guys are following all of the social medias for Rainbow Six Siege and everybody else on the talent roster and players, as the majority of them will be retweeting and interacting with stuff throughout the major. BDS is going to start downstairs for their defense, and operator-wise, I mean, they're going for a little bit of a roam here with Lycofac, but everything else making quite a bit of sense. I especially like Shaiko on the Warden. I've always liked this op when you consider Shaiko in the pool, because it helps him counter out utilities that are quite annoying and stops him from gunfighting people. Who else would you want that on?
Absolutely the case. SSG taking a very, very slow approach to things here inside of their first minute. No one even really entering into the building as of yet, just poking at a few of the windows so far here. So a very cautious approach because, to be fair, it's a pretty complicated setup from BDS right now. A lot of players off on their own is the biggest risk about it, like we see with Lycofac right now. Zero support to this type of setup here, but relying pretty heavily on the movement that the Orcs can bring to the table to get him back into good straights and good positions with the rest of his teammates. We see even more complexities deployed to the first floor, and of course, the extremities of the basement too. Fultz with an unfortunate turn of events, but the good news is Rampy has already made up for it. Fultz just getting caught there on the Jackal scan, but Rampy is right there to trade out his teammate.
My American heart bleeds for Fultz on that timing. That was truly disgusting. Lycofac, a saving grace, guardian angel, anything of the sort, looking down on him from above, but probably joined them as he is now dead to rights, isn't he? So BDS, although Quite the blunder there from Foltz for just a split second. Still able to maintain this man advantage and get the cams from Dokkaebi. This is amazing here. Alems has Valkyrie. Bride has Maestro. You have access to all of those now from the offensive favor.
Intel steal, and more than likely that is going to potentially force BDS to shoot out a few of their own cameras, be able to avoid being spotted out, especially in late round positions here. So 1 minute remains. This is the biggest problem for SSG now. The timer's still ticking very weightily against them, and they have yet to enter the basement here. So we'll have to see if they can still put things together. Only just now starting the makings of that descent. As we saw, though, getting that cam intel certainly gives them a lot of extra to bleed off of in advance, with now not needing to use potentially even their own drones down here. Certainly increases the speed of this timer a little bit as well. Rampy opens it up with a bang, knocking out Alems, just leaving Bride and Shaiko, the two site anchors, alive to fight the rest of this round off. SSG will waste no time having found that kill. They are immediately going for the jugular to try and shut this one down. Shaiko gets a little bit too roam heavy. Gets found out in the open, and Bride, the same story befalls him deeper into wine. It's a shutdown from SSG to start off the second half.
All right, Lycan, did you bring the League of Assassins here to land? I mean, these guys are firing on all cylinders. Not a single negative KD in sight for Spacestation Gaming. Worst of all, a 4-3, and that's Bosco of all people. He's just running utility the whole damn time. As for BDS, you can definitely not say the same. Shaiko and Bride, 1-7 and 1-5 respectively. SSG shutting down Shaiko?
We'll have to see if that will truly
exclamation
be the
point,
case.
exclamation point, exclamation point.
Question mark? BDS, of course, taking their time out right now, and they pretty much have to at this point. Taking it one round early, we've been seeing a lot of other teams do at least. They want to leave themselves a little bit of extra leading room here in the event that whatever they're going to change up after this tac pause does not work out. They'll still have that one extra round to fall back on here. But needless to say, BDS are up against the wall with SSG now claiming such a huge lead against them here, coming off the defensive side with a lead as well.
Attack timeout, very, very needed. Love the timing as well. Space Station just got to round 5, and this is where you and I over the years have found this is like really that money spot. When that team is really hyper approaching, that final round, you really don't want to call that tac timeout when they're already on match point. So when they get to round 5, it's really the last time. You want to call it then or call it, well, practically never, but then you wouldn't exactly be using your timeout at all, would you? And that's even worse. So for BDS, they're going to call it in good time. We'll see if it fixes anything on their defensive end. It'll at least change up their site and their operator lineup. They'll be bringing a couple different pieces here. Shaika's going to be on the Legion. We saw him playing around with this a little bit earlier on today. Hopefully helps him right the wrongs that we've seen so far here and take it to SSG. BDS needs some holy water for round 8.
SSG looks to get the penultimate point here. It's up to BDS to put a stop to it, returning to something that's a little bit more defender-friendly as they go over towards the bar setup for this second hold. And SSG, however, wasting no time adventuring themselves over towards those rappels leading into libraries. That'll be their obvious first target, as is often the case for this site.
Yeti, the spearhead, once upon a time when it came to the Sonics. Now the IGL of SSG, the main man, the captain. And I'd say he's doing a pretty damn good job over the last stage and this LAN thus far. It obviously wasn't the greatest start, but considering this map, it's really starting to come back into their favor. I really didn't know how this is going to start off. They had that good match up against Fury, but Fury really not able to accomplish much against any of their group, co-partners here in Jönköping.
Fury is, by the way, at potential risk of being eliminated via this round of games that have come out. Not only, of course, this one here, but the other two teams that are also playing on the other side. I believe that's going to be Fury themselves up against W7M. If we are to assume W7M continues to dominate and wins the matchup versus Fury, we could very easily see SSG lock in their elimination as well with a successful victory themselves. SSG, though, going to try and close out this round. They're starting to put that pressure here onto Library, but having a little bit of trouble making the entry due to the harsh cutoffs from BDS that we expect to be established here. Yeti, though, with a potential problem. Oh, so close for both of them. Yeti not expecting the dash across, a little bit too far ahead on the pre-fire there. He tries to go back for it, a like effect side. Yeti now catches the flight coming down from Alems, but both of them low HP. Do they dare to re-peek each other now? Like effect, he wants it. You can see him still spraying in from time to time. But Yeti, he wants to back away and play this safe from the looks of it.
Well, they got the equalizer. but these HP bars definitely are anything but. Yeti and Fultz, quite a bit of HP drained from them. You can say the same for Lycofak. Renshiro, a little bit of a tag onto him as well, but overall BDS a little bit more buffed and ready for this last minute. SSG looking for match point here. This execute means so very much. Some shots ringing in through the library window, but Brede and the whole gang show up to the party. BDS make it Fultz's problem now. It looks like he might just stay outside and mess around, give SSG some time to think about things. He's just going to take his time here with this last 30 seconds.
Important note too, Lycofak did eventually win that battle for the basement against Yeti, so obviously killing that part of the pinch from up top too. Fultz, unfortunate turn of events stepping into that goo mine as he's now certainly been revealed. I believe he still had players close enough to be able to get the audible cue from that. Still begin to lock out those angles, prevent any successful drop from Fultz here. And overall allow for this round to more than likely fall into the hands of BDS. Fultz is trying to pad the stats as much as humanly possible at this point. Gives his team a little bit more time to kind of talk about the situation as well, since he's just inside of a clutch scenario right now that's pretty unrealistic to win. Eventually does get knocked out, but at least gave his team that extra 20 or 30 seconds to figure out what went wrong there and what they need to quickly change to prevent a BDS comeback. Either way though, good bounce back from BDS after that tack pause, and it shows up just in the nick of time as they were just about to go up against a nearly unwinnable scoreline.
A lot of moving parts on that one with the utility exchange going on up top, Somas for impact charges, as well as some of the gun duels we had going on downstairs. It was really anybody's game at that moment, and then the site setup for BDS takes off like a rocket into the sky, eliminating SSG member one after another. 3 fall to the sword of BDS, and they quickly claim round 8 after that point. SSG, they still have quite the cushion though, don't they, when it comes to this game at the current moment. Haven't been able to get to that penultimate point, but they are breathing on it.
New element going to be coming in specifically for Hot, and of course is the Ying now going to potentially be brought to the table. A few changes that might actually shift away, and indeed it will. It'll go towards an Osa instead, but either way, a new element here for SSG that we have yet to see so far in this game from them. Bosco, of course, is changing over towards the hard breach as well, which previously was missing entirely from this lineup, and then just a few other thematic changes like Yeti going over to the much more comfortable Sophia, Fultz as well going on to a much more aggressive operator on the Yana.
We're going to be making the usual rotation there for Kitchen. Now some soft paneling there at the back of the dining room as well. So some potential wall banging can commence. Either way it goes down, be potential for a kill there for either squad. Obviously, SSG is going to have to get towards the site for that really to become a big component of this. So we'll see how they deal with this opening as we're already 30 seconds in. It's all going to be onto the drone game as you'd suspect, but immediately Rampy and Fultz going to hightail it into Snowmobile, and they're going to go their separate ways. Rampy's going to go to blue, Fultz up main stairs. Lycofak, speaking of blue, clambering up top, where he's going to find Bosco inside of the library area. He's managing the windows at the current moment. That's also the case location. It looks like Fultz has made his way into Fireplace Hall here, moving his way in through bar. Nobody in gaming either. Rampy does have control of the bottom of blue at the current moment with Lycofak holding on to the game door.
Rampy playing this very patiently now. Continues to sit back up on top. Lycofak in the meanwhile has that slight pixel, but that gives the window of opportunity since he's too focused on it towards Rampy. Hot and similarly finds impact against Renshiro, so SSG off to a much hotter start this time, bringing it immediately down to the 5v3. It's those site anchors, at least on the previous round, that caused some big problems for SSG when they finally went for the execute though. So this kill spree wall means a lot for the early round, does not necessarily translate into a direct win just yet for the SSG roster.
Yeah, it was 3 separate members of BDS rolling through SSG on that previous round, and it looks like it might happen again. Alems kicks off the party. He'll take down Yeti. That was that nice angle that we saw up top that he was holding onto here from Piano. SSG will be able to get the wall up top, but majority of BDS has rotated back onto site. Alems, though, still wants to stick in that area up top. You can see him over there inside of the master closet. We'll see if Space Station are thwarted by those plans. There'll be an impact EMP from Hot and Cold and a set down of Osa's shield. This is really going to assist with overwatching this plant.
I'll still be careful on the plant. You can see at least one player from the BDS roster playing this quite close to the contest at the moment inside of Kitchen there, so can very easily get in the way of the plant, but I think that's what this second OSA shield is potentially going to help out with. Just setting up a plant angle. Oh, there is that slight pinch of your body that does peek out when you're setting that shield up, and they're nearly able to get Hutton in that moment of opportunity, but ultimately the Nitro makes that shield a bit of a moot point anyways. It destroys it immediately, still leaving BDS alive with 2, and SSG out of time now. Needs to make this play directly, go straight for the fight here, and thankfully they're not going to have to work that hard to get it, but Shaiko, the reaction speed from him, second to none. Bride out, but he gets 1 for 1. The plant will go down onto the ground, and now the pressure on Shaiko. He won't be able to catch the side angle from Hutton, and he wins out the round.
Hot and cold, some flair from back in the DZ day. He gets it done on the Thermite. Nice little 2K to wrap it up with a tight bow. And Space Station Gaming finally find match point. BDS, a lot of work to do now. No tack timeouts to help. 3 defensive rounds in a row is what we will need from the French camp in order to push us to overtime. SSG looking so dominant in day 2 here in Sweden. Only 5 rounds dropped between the 2 games.
See now if we can get the closeout from SSG. 1 more round needed here, and they will lock in number 7 and cause some serious problems for W7M's early qualification. We have had quite a few teams come this much closer to qualifying today. Unfortunately, to be spoiled, though, in the final moments of it. We will very much, from the looks of things, need that day 3 to settle who is going forward to the playoff stage for teams here in Group A.
Wow, we're going to be bringing Maverick out. We haven't seen Maverick in a while, actually. Once they added impact EMPs and kind of rebuff the utility, he's just not as picked as often anymore. Still definitely a strong character, but I don't believe he even has his frag grenades anymore. It's just the M4 and the torch, which is plenty for that character. The torch is fantastic, as we all know too much. The frag grenades were just a little too hot to trot, so they had to take those away from him. Womp womp. Only 3, or actually I think it's 4 characters, something like that. I always forget Glass. That's my problem. That has the frag grenades. But either way, Fultz is going to be wielding one of them. They won't be bringing Sledge. That's usually the pair that we see, minus Yana, which she's also not going to be along for the ride either.
As you've seen, though, bandit tricking is kind of back in play now, and we even saw a great example of that from SSG back in the previous half here. So the Maverick going to be the direct counter to that, and just, okay, I'll just open the wall all on my own. You can't even stop me now. You can try to shoot me, of course.
Imagine if I had a blowtorch.
So that blowtorch will come in quite handy for SSG in terms of simplifying the snowmobile garage.
I like to think that was Maverick's pitch for Rainbows. Like, they're all in the boardroom, and they're just like, so imagine you had a blowtorch. Like, okay, I'm listening. So, yeah, but he's actually going to get...
paint your wall openings.
Yeah, exactly. Microsoft Paint that thing, and that's exactly what Yeti's going to do. He starts at the top. The Mav trick, we finally get to see it again here. He's going to make that nice little hole there in the center so they can fit utility in through it. Obviously, if you ever played Mav in your life, then you've usually done that to try and fit frag grenades through it. Like a fact, though, is going to fit a bullet in the face of Fultz. Rampy goes down to Renshiro. BDS. Oh man, this is looking scary. Renshiro gets it with the double. BDS have found themselves here. All it took was SSG activating them with that match point at the top of the screen.
And he might be getting the snowmobile garage open, but really not going to mean much for the majority of SSG at this point in the round. BDS's early game aggression finds kill after kill after kill after kill again, as we see Lems pick up Yeti. Just that one final player remaining, and Renshiro has no problem fending him off as well. Hot and cold falls down, and we see SSG drop a very important round here, but at the same time, still that decent cushion of 2 additional rounds to be played out here before they take us to overtime.
Laughing straight to the bank with that one, huh? BDS, especially Renshiro with 3 bodies to his name in that one, but now they have to try and get it done on some less favorable sites. Some sites that SSG have been very good at attacking. Bar Gaming is one of those options. They also have Kitchen that they could potentially go to, but they're going to choose the prior. It's going to be Bar Gaming here for BDS and potentially their last round. Let's see what Shaiko's going to be on. He's going to be on the Legion, so he's probably going to be playing around the blue stairs again. We were seeing him previously hold on to some crosses when it came to Library, making it really difficult to try and get rid of this wall for SSG as they continue to add so much to it. He gave over the goods. He gave the impacts up and was able to eliminate a lot of that hard breach, as well as get some kills in the process as well.
SSG once again still primed and ready to close out this game on match point. We actually looking like we are going to get that gridlock here too. Haven't seen anybody switch away from it.
And we got quite some unique stuff. I mean, I haven't even seen a Finka since you and I got here in any game, and we've finally gotten it here for Fultz. He's going to be using the Spear 308 as well, which got some love after the nerf to LMGs.
Bit of Capital being added into this one for Bosco, so certainly looking to out-utility BDS on the execute, and they could certainly do that, especially given the fact that teams often rely on that little corridor between billiards as well as bar to rotate between. Look at this utility. They can lock people in there if right, cook them on the inside of it. Speaking of getting cooked, Rampy running right in to deal with Lycofact, not letting him go crazy this round as he did on the last.
That's a really, really good idea. SSG have been very aware that BDS like to use Lycofact on those roams, you know, defense or offense, you know, try and have him sneak around and find some of those frags. So Rampy immediately jumps into Big Garage early around, make sure nobody is around on camera, and then just holds that angle and awaits his arrival. Works out beautifully for him. Doesn't even look towards that direction, just gets bodied as soon as he attempts to cross. Space Station usually pretty good at using these advantages to their fullest. They're on the utility game now.
First of the spike strips comes out from Yeti, using most of them actually quite quickly here just to fend out the usual rotation points that would deal with fending off the staging ground that SSG has now set up for themselves. Interesting that's in the basement more than anything though, which is not always the first go-to. This is usually it instead that we're seeing SSG deploy into now. Fultz as well as Bosco trying to steal away this library control, but there's very heavy presence. Only 2 players from SSG actually trying to work their way into this area of the map, so not realistically going to be able to go for it. However, the assistance now coming in on the Capital is going to change that here. Fultz able to find out Renshiro as he's pushed out of coverage. Bring things down to only 3 here for BDS.
Minute 15. SSG have done everything right so far. Not a single misstep. No damage, no anything. Just map control and kills coming their way. It's been quite the positive boon thus far for what could be our last round, unless BDS has something to say about it. It's going to be back to the drones here for SSG, but specifically Hot and Cold, as he's going to begin droning up blue, and this means quite a lot to the story right now, folks. You see Shaiko right there on the stairwell. Actually, no, I was wrong about that. He's inside of mud, so Hot and Cold, he's not even going to see him. Shaiko might have actually slipped through the cracks. This should be something that SSG checks, but as soon as that timer gets low, things just get really weird with Siege. You kind of make missteps every once in a while that you would usually check before. Hot and Cold's going to rotate over. Shaiko's close on this window. I'm getting scared here, John. Rampy's going to get a Lems, and that's going to make it a 5 versus 2. We still have all of this verticality to go through as well. Shaiko, I do believe, has been found. Hot and Cold gets him. Is it going to be a flawless round for Space Station to end it all here? It's up to Brede. He's getting burned out.
Move.
The LMG. Yeti lays him down, and Space Station Gaming gets the French squad.
Perfect counter on that final round, and exactly the way we expected to see. Specifically, those Capital incendiary bolts get used out there, literally cooking the player that tried to sit on the inside of Connector. No way to escape, as Brede is the last one standing and eventually goes down. SSG gets their revenge from earlier on in the tournament and takes this one versus BDS. We're going to go to a short break, ladies and gentlemen. When we do come back, we'll have the breakdown of this game and the follow-through of today's events. And we weren't lying. It was literally just a second, ladies and gentlemen. We are
about
back
5
here
of them.
now. Yeah. So coming back to us here now, we are going to be breaking down that matchup for you guys. As it was a very excellent affair for SSG, getting that ultimate revenge against BDS. As obviously SSG had a little bit of a lackluster start early in the tournament. Now they've woken up and have taken down BDS. A defensive-sided start as well, able to go up 4-2 on the half.
Yeah, what was that from Space Station? You could see how much that meant to the story as well, because BDS, they were starting to put things together on their defensive side, but since SSG did so well on theirs, it made it to where they really didn't have the timing, nor really the round count to be able to play with things like that. Here's the highlights from that game, and quite a few of them as well, as we saw some crack shots from both teams.
Absolutely the case. I mean, BDS were no slouches inside of this matchup, especially after they took that tactical pause, starting to come back alive into this one. Really seemed like they were going to be able to make a little bit more of a run towards it, but unfortunately, the earlier advantage that SSG found, especially off of the half half there, and the fact they rebuffered it up to a 3-round advantage by winning at least the first round of the second half as well, just made it too much of a task to find that much consistency in terms of round wins that late into the game from the harder side of the map as well, where the sites are either very one-sided for your team or either very one-sided for your opponents based on the setup there. Just way too difficult of a map to try and work that comeback on, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and the big difference is that SSG had an active scoreboard this time around, right? Like everybody was on point, getting big kills and making big plays, and that's what you need to take down a team like BDS, especially on Chalet. I know we've talked enough about this defensive side for Spacestation Gaming. Their offense is looking really good, dastardly, I'd say, and I really love some of the utility choices they made and some of the counters that we saw implemented, especially downstairs.
A little bit scary, though. I will say that. Almost like Dark Zero-esque in the way that they're perfectly comfortable just running the timer down to like 15, 20 seconds and still having no one in the site as of yet. We saw it happening quite a few times, and it did trip them up on at least one round where we were able to see those anchors from BDS fire back with 3 kills in the span of just a few seconds to be able to ultimately win that round. But for the most part, they still had control over those types of executes and were able to win things out here. With 11 rounds played total, 7-4 scoreline for SSG, with all the stats there on your right side, of course, for your viewing pleasure.
Rampy 10-4 in that game. A lot of that coming from his buck play on the offensive side as well. I mean, he looked so very dominant when it came to that operator. BDS not really able to have the same fire, the same light when it comes to day 2. Hopefully day 3 has something in store for them.
Their newest player holding on actually quite well inside of that matchup with a pretty respectable scoreline. At the end of the day, Lycofak able to put together 9 kills, but the usual suspects, Shaiko, Alems as well, not as present inside of that matchup, especially on the entry game as we had been seeing in previous games. It was actually Renshiro, who's, for I think a lot of these previous matches, actually been more towards the bottom in terms of stat
He's a
contribution.
utility guy, always has
right?
been for them.
He was actually the best player in terms of frags coming out of this game, so a very strange one for BDS. They're definitely going to be reviewing this one tonight and figuring out how exactly to fix those mistakes for the end of the groups tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you look at BDS's scoreboard, the big thing that will stand out to all of you is what always stands out, which is Shaiko's score. This time, not very positive. In fact, I believe a 0.5 KD, because I don't think he got a kill in that last round either, so it might even be worse. But past that, that was really the big thing there, right? Their top end of their scoreboard is very tight-knit and highly rated. We're talking about Shaiko, we're talking about Alems, and we're talking about Lycofak. One of those things wasn't there in a very serious way, and when you have SSG playing like that, you really need Shaiko to be able to step up to the plate and knock out a home run.
Fortunately, not going to be the case inside of this matchup. Instead, it was everyone else on SSG that was able to step up to the plate. We'll go ahead and get the results up on the screen for all the groups here today as we now bring ourselves to the closing portion, unfortunately, of today's stream. Let's go ahead and take a look at Group A, where we have the results for the day. It's now the Sonics up on top of this group, surprisingly so for me as well, given the way they started things out, but now on top with 9 points. Black Dragons, M&M, and Cyclops all tied in second place with 5 points each, but obviously round differential is still contributing to a pecking order there. Black Dragons holds second, M&M holds third, Cyclops holds fourth, all to be changed up tomorrow.
What does the letter A stand for, John? Apocalypse.
I was actually at a loss there, so good thing you filled it in for me.
It really, really is for Group A. I mean, it is utter calamity when you look at that board there, except for our NA representative. So, gotta, tuck the coat a little bit on that one. I mean, Super definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to picking up players, let me tell you. Let's look over at Group B and see what happened over here today, though. Team Liquid, 12 points. They have only won games in regulation. That Lagonis-powered team is looking amazing.
Absolutely the case. Liquid locking in an absolutely dominating run here so far in the groups with perfect 4-0 records so far here. None of them even going to overtime as well, on a positive 12 round differential, comparing to Heroic and TSM, who both sit on 6, and then the unfortunate donut for Sandbox, especially that heartbreaker match they just played.
That's what I was about to mention. I was over here waving my hands at John. I was like, mention the Sandbox game. 5-0 start for Sandbox. 7-5 victory for Team Liquid. That's not something that happens all too often. Group C on your screen now, folks. Let's get right through this one. W7M with 12 points. All 4 of their wins also coming in regulation. Team BDS and Space Station just faced off, rather. And we saw how that one went. Space Station winning that one in regulation. 6 points to both of their names and 0 for Fury.
Well, like we said there, since that one did end in regulation from the looks of things as well, that's going to be tie in terms of points gained there between W7M and SSG. We were looking to potentially qualify W7M for the playoffs in that matchup, but I think they still got to fight just a little bit harder. However, they're still in a great position. Don't get me wrong. They've almost got it. Probably with one more win, they will be locked in tomorrow morning, but still need to fight just a little bit harder for it as BDS and SSG can still apparently catch up to them. And then finally, we have Group D, ladies and gentlemen, final group of the day here in the final group of our tournament, where we still have the Wolves from Europe leading in front with 11 points, 3 wins, one of them being in overtime. And that same positive 12 round differential that we also saw out of Team Liquid earlier. FaZe Clan now sitting in second place after dropping 2 maps, going 2-2 overall on their score, both of them being won or lost inside of regulation. Direwolves was actually tied with them as well at 6 points, and Mirage, unfortunately, down at the bottom with only 1 point shown so far via an overtime loss.
Yeah, craziest thing about that is Mirage still technically has a chance to make it to playoffs. FaZe or Direwolves, if they lose both of their games tomorrow and they win both in regulation, that's that's 6 points, making 7 with that 1 point that they already have, and they'd be able to make it to playoffs. But that would actually be calling for a lot. I did my math wrong there. There's 4 teams. Oh my goodness. It's been a long day, folks. All right. Apologies about that. So unfortunate for our NA boys, but hey, it is their first international LAN. Mirage has literally never ever been to a LAN as an organization, let alone as this roster. So, you give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for us here on the Bravo stream today. We've got one more day of Bravo stream action for you, but plenty more over on the main stream. Our playoff stage will be continuing this weekend, but make sure you are joining us at the same time tomorrow morning for all of the action here at the Rainbow Six Major. See you tomorrow, guys.